Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is out in theaters, new fantasy adventure film based on the massively popular tabletop role-playing game, or rather based on its mechanics and set in one of its worlds, because as far as I'm aware the movie doesn't directly adapt any of the existing stories. It makes its own up, as it should be with D&D. The film was directed by John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein, who previously made Game Night, which I unexpectedly loved. And it stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Regé-Jean Page, Justin Smith, Sophia Lillis, Hugh Grant, and Daisy Head. The story opens with Chris Pine's character Ed, who's a former spy, adventurer, thief, now imprisoned together with Michelle Rodriguez for a heist that went wrong. He then delivers a lot of exposition on his backstory, although to be fair, the way that the exposition is delivered to us, the audience, is fairly cool. He explains how, the way he had this crew he used to work with and how the heist has gone bad. Eventually, the two of them get out and venture south to reconnect with their previous friends and Ed's teenage daughter. But one of their former friends betrays them, meaning they now have to do a bunch of stuff to execute a heist on him in order to get back all the money and the daughter and the magical object. But things get even more complicated as it turns out that there's a creepy mage involved and she clearly has some sort of sinister agenda going on. So it sounds complicated and convoluted and chaotic, and it kind of is. The story has a lot going on. There's a bunch of characters. They travel across the world, essentially teleporting across the map, going to this place in order to get this information, and then to that place to get this item, and then they have to get here to meet this person. However, despite its chaotic nature, it all kind of works and comes together to create a cohesive story. There is a method to all of this madness, and it's always clear what the next step is going to be and why the heroes do what they do. We're never lost as the audience. Also, I think it fits the nature of D&D sessions as I heard them described, with people coming up with ridiculous convoluted solutions to simple problems, or derailing the main campaign to do something completely meaningless in the long run. There are also other little touches which show that the filmmakers love the tabletop RPG games. There are interesting set pieces which look exactly like something that a dungeon master would come up with. Various arbitrary rules surrounding magic, like this spell has this exact range and you can only do this for a certain amount of time, etc. And these are called out directly in a very funny way. There's also a character which is a straight up NPC showing up to help the heroes and then just fucking off into the distance, all the while speaking his dialogue like an NPC would. I think the humor is splendid. It's much better than the trailer promised, because I sort of expected we would get the usual modern day Marvel style humor where everyone is quipping all the time and no seriousness is allowed. Honor Among Thieves avoids that trap quite impressively. The humor is there and it is genuinely funny and there's a lot of it, but it never compromises the heart of the story and the characters. There are two moments especially which come to mind. One where Michelle Rodriguez talks to someone important from her past, and one right after where Chris Pine sort of breaks into a song to cheer her up. And both those moments, especially the first one, seem like they will be strictly comedic and played just for laughs. But they aren't. There's a genuine warmth in both of them, showing that these characters aren't just joke machines, they're real people. It really felt like a breath of fresh air, and I realized how much I missed this sort of stuff in modern day popcorn movies. The action is great, the CGI is very good. There's also a surprising amount of practical effects, particularly for creatures of various non-human races, which I found pretty impressive. The performances are great across the board. I mean, Chris Pine is endlessly charismatic. Hugh Grant is wonderfully slimy once again. He seems to have found a niche for himself in the past couple of years, playing just the most ridiculous, charming assholes. Daisy Head is genuinely scary as the villain, as the mage. Justice Smith and Regé-Jean Page are both very funny. And Michelle Rodriguez kind of plays the character that you would expect her to play, that she's known for, the tough lady. But again, it feels like there's more to her here than in other films. Like she's allowed to actually have some sort of depth and not be just a strong, mean woman all the time. She is that, but she's also more. If I were to have a complaint about the film, it's that it's just a little bit too long. It goes for 2 hours, 14 minutes, and towards the end I was getting slightly tired. But for the most part, this runtime is justified, and there really aren't any stretches that feel like they could have been cut completely from the film. So I expected very little from Honor Among Thieves, and I ended up adoring the film. I had lots of fun, and I think it really recaptures the feel of lighthearted, slightly campy fantasy adventure films like Princess Bride or Willow that we haven't had in theaters for a very, very long time. I loved this movie, and I hope that they make more and more in this franchise.